G'day everybody, it's Dave from Wing Chun Mind Force. Good to see you. Sorry I missed you last week. I had a 1 week break. Just felt right for some reason. I didn't have anything particularly to say. This week I've got something very exciting in my bus video to share with you. It's an article from a magazine called New Martial Hero from the 70s, and it's an interview with Grandmaster Yip and it's from 1972. I printed this out quite a while ago, and rereading it again I realised what a treasure it is, because for us in the Chu Shong Tin lineage, we hang on every word that came from the mouth of our Sigong, Chu Shong Tin. And we know a little bit about Master Yip Man, but generally speaking we don't know that much. We haven't heard that much about him or from him. Anyway, I'm going to read this and I think you'll get a lot out of it. It'll be in two parts because it's like a 4-page essay. So this is as he's being interviewed. The writer says, if you're a beginner when it comes to fighting, that concept itself is for you likely no more than throwing a punch or giving off a kick. However, if you manage to have someone who cares to explain to you the essence of Wing Chun, it is highly likely that within 5 minutes you'll learn about the unique way in which a Wing Chun practitioner pushes enemies back. You will also learn about the standards used in Chi Sao, sticking hands, and the secret behind defeating enemies using the shortest path and the fastest of speed. That is what Wing Chun is all about, using simple, practical moves to defeat enemies. Over a mere 23 years, the aging Master Yip Man has made Wing Chun hugely popular in Hong Kong, and has recruited many enthusiasts under his wing. Surely there's ample reason behind the popularity of the sport and the diligence of many of his students. Just a side note here, this is 1972, so this is really around about the same time that Bruce Lee burst on the scene, but Yip Man had been making a mark for a lot longer than that, allowing people to come and learn the once secret art of Wing Chun. To introduce the art of Wing Chun, I've conducted a special interview with Master Yip Man. The 76-year-old is still in his physical prime. He is sharp, energetic, and offered a response to every single one of my questions. I have learnt much from this interview, and hopefully we will too. Those who are avid readers of martial arts novels, which I think are called wuxia, are surely familiar with the story of Fong Sai Yuk. The story is called Fong Sai Yuk Challenges the Defender of the Ring. One of the most notable characters in the story is the monk Ji Sin. That's Z-H-I-S-I-N. The nun Nong Mei trained under that same master as Ji Sin, and she was actually proclaimed as the founder of Wing Chun. Looking back, this story takes us back some 200 years. If Wing Chun was founded by a woman, surely the style will be notably smoother and more subdued. Contrary to such popular belief, however, Wing Chun is actually much more aggressive than other martial arts styles. This stemmed from the fact that the founder is a woman, whose stamina is no match if she opposes a man in a fight. If she is not able to take him down right away at the start of the match, it will be impossible for her to continue on. Along that same target, the first rule of Wing Chun is therefore focused on aggression and speed. One must be able to inflict harm on an enemy at the wave of a hand, so that the enemy will know that he must retreat. And that very much reminds me of stories of Sigong Chu being involved in those rooftop fights where everybody else would fight for a couple of rounds or a minute, and Sigong would just hit him once. End of story. They didn't want to fight anymore, and even one guy just could see the chi power in him and said, "No, I don't want to fight you. You're too good for me." So that's the way of Wing Chun. You must be able to inflict harm on an enemy at the wave of a hand so that the enemy will know they must retreat. Nong Mei passed on her skills to yet another woman whose name gave birth to this particular school of martial arts. Her name was Yim Wing Chun, and she then taught what she had learnt to her husband, Lung Bak Cho. When it was Lung's turn to teach his disciples, since the art itself was yet to be named, Lung named it in memory of his wife and aptly called it Wing Chun. That's pretty cool. That's coming from Master Yip Man, and I haven't heard that story before, that it was Lung Bak Cho. And just as an aside, I haven't got the data right with me, but his name, Lung Bak Cho, there's something in there that means bridge, and it struck me that somehow it's connected to Chum Kiu. Anyway, that's just an idea I'll follow up sometime. Wong Wah Bo, one of Lung's students who worked in a performance troupe, then taught the art to Lung Yi Tai. Yi Tai then taught Lung Zhang. They've got Lung Zan here. We are all familiar with the fact that Lung Zhang rose to fame in the city of Foshan in the province of Guangdong, China. His star disciple, Chan Hua Shun, whose nickname was Loose Change Hua, eventually became the master of Master Yip Man himself. Chan operated his martial arts school for 32 years, but only taught 16 disciples. Yip Man was the last of his students. Yip Man is presently 76 years of age. He started practicing Chinese martial arts at 13 years of age and moved to Hong Kong from mainland China in 1949. Few residents of Hong Kong knew of Wing Chun back then. After 23 years of hard work, the result of Yip Man's work is now visible. Master Yip has stopped taking on new students years ago. So I just want to point out that it says that he started learning Chinese martial arts at 13 years of age. I have to assume that means he started Wing Chun at 13. And at this time of this interview in 1972, he was 76, which means he practiced Wing Chun for 63 years. I've talked to some people who should know, who told me that he was extremely good and that Zigong had the very highest regard for his skills. So I just want to make that point, because as a fan of Yip Man since the 70s myself, because of my passion for Bruce Lee and his art, I didn't know this. I didn't know that he trained for so long. All right, so he goes on to say, when talking to Master Yip Man, it was clear that he acted nothing like his age. He spoke with a clear, strong voice and was not at all boastful. Next, he talks about, the writer says, in Master Yip's school, I saw an oddly shaped wooden post. The post is surrounded by a square frame, and on the post, 3 planks are affixed horizontally. Under the actual post, a crooked piece of plank can be seen. I asked what this structure is all about and was told that this is the Muk Yan Zhong, wooden dummy. The 4 planks act as the 4 limbs of the human body. When practicing, fists or kicks land on these limbs to simulate an actual fight. I find it very interesting that he calls them planks. It's not the first word that drops into my head, but he's obviously talking about the two tapered arms, wooden arms at the top of the dummy, the center one that's around about navel height, and then the leg, which is usually made out of a bent tree root to simulate upper leg and a lower leg and even a foot with a little bit of a bump at the bottom. Master Yip is saying that these are there to help you simulate an actual fight, and that's what Master Chu Shong Tin says in his book, that when we start to practice a dummy is when we start to think about fighting. And something I'm big on is what I've been taught by my teachers: don't think fighting in the forms, just dance the forms, just work on the right ideas, but don't think, here I am attacking this guy, I'm doing this and that. But Master Chu said quite clearly, once you are ready to practice the dummy, that's when you can start to think about, okay, somebody's throwing this at me, kicking at me, doing this situation, that situation. You really are allowed off the leash to start thinking about fighting, because by the time you're well versed in the first 3 empty-handed forms, you're ready to, it's ingrained in you. So you should be able to think about strategy and tactics and the effects of things. There's a lot to it. It's good to get it from the mouth of the old master. 1972. He says then, to start practicing Wing Chun implies practicing forms. The most basic form is Siu Nim Dao, little idea or thought, and it's the start of all training. It's then followed by Chum Kiu, search for the bridge, An intermediate routine which focuses on sidelong and shoulder close range attacks. I think that's sort of interesting and a bit unique, focusing on sidelong and shoulder close range attacks, which is true. A lot of the time, the things we're doing in Chum Kiu are sort of half at our side. We're facing this way, but somebody's attacking from here. We're dealing with it using our whole body, connecting to them, using Sil Nim Dao principles and then the Chum Kiu principles of using the center to rotate and to step. And then he says the last form is Bilji, darting fingers, the most advanced routine of all. One fixates itself to the ground by spreading legs to a bit less than shoulder width and then sits down on an invisible chair, which is one of the ideas of Sil Nim Dao. To what you might, what some people call a stance, is really just a way of standing. And I like the invisible chair idea because I don't think I've talked about it actually, but for me it's the same feeling as the floating idea. It's that you're supported by something under your pelvis, and essentially it's the Tai Gong thing, that it's sort of sealed and supported down there, which allows you to just connect with the top of your head, even go beyond that, but be sort of there floating, held up by the thing that you're floating on, or the invisible chair that you're sitting on. This form takes up little space. This is talking about Bilji. But the tip of the toes of both feet turn inwards, which marks its uniqueness in pose. This is to accompany routines, or forms as he's calling them, which do not require lots of jumping, but forms where one glides along the ground. However, while the limbs are focused on gliding, one is able to firmly root itself to the ground and do not appear to be afloat. Now that's interesting, a bit of interesting language. So let's have a look at that again. This way of standing, sitting on the invisible chair, tips of the toes of both feet turned inwards. That's the goat grabbing stance. This is to accompany routines or forms or ways of moving which do not require lots of jumping. And as you know, we really don't jump in Wing Chun. Not saying that you can't jump. There's no real saying you can't jump around if you really feel right about it. But in training, you should. When you're doing your forms, there's no jumping in the forms. Not really. But I like this gliding idea. He literally says you don't jump, but you glide along the ground, and the limbs are focused on gliding, and you're able to firmly root yourself to the ground and do not appear to be afloat. So in a sort of a roundabout way, he's basically saying that you are floating, even though you don't appear to be floating, and you're gliding. And that really sums up how to step and how to move in Wing Chun. I've never been shown any secret footwork. The only footwork I've ever known is just to step naturally. Obviously, there's the unusual stepping in Chum Kiu, and which we use in the dummy to some extent. But it really comes down to just gliding and floating, like he says. Gliding is a good idea, and that feeling you get in Bilji when you're gliding your feet one way and then the other. In those first three sections, we sort of glide our feet in a slight, sort of a bit of a circle. That's a gliding feeling. I've never really said that word about it or heard anyone else say it, but it is gliding. And when you step in Chum Kiu, your feet should be really soft, really flat on the ground. And once again, that is gliding. That's the feeling of proper Wing Chun stepping, is a gliding feeling. It's soft, it's elegant. And that's why I love the traditional Kung Fu gentleman's shoes, because they're soft and they allow you to glide. And I don't think it's good for you to train on rough surfaces and in rubberized shoes that much. I'm not saying that it's not always wrong, But I think for Wing Chun, there's wisdom in all sorts of stuff, and the wisdom of wearing those Kung Fu shoes, definitely it's something that'll help you. So I'm going to leave it at that. Next week, I'll carry on. There's some other really surprising gems in the rest of the article too. But things I just got from that off the top of my head is that he indicated the art was 200 years old rather than 300. So there's a bit of a clue there. Maybe there's been a bit of an exaggeration of how long it's been around. I can't prove that, but just people have said the number of teachers, if you go back to Yin Wing Chun and Nung Mei, there's a sort of a gap in, it couldn't possibly, unless people are living 150 years. So there's something in that. A wave of the hand to damage the opponent to make them not want to come back. That's perfect description of how we want to fight in Wing Chun. Not a whole lot of sparring and flurrying around, just bam, end of fight. The floating and gliding, the using of the dummy to practice your fighting. So please subscribe, hit the notifications bell, as they say. Keep the cool comments coming. I love the conversations. Sneaking up towards 1,000. I'm not actually sure where we are today, but last time I looked, I think it's getting close to 960. So I only need 40 more Kung Fu fanatics or martial art fanatics to subscribe, and I'll hit the magic 1,000, and they'll send me a golden donut or something. I don't think they give me anything, but it'll be cool anyway. All right. See you later.